Live and on tape from the Silicon Valley, this is the Daily Disturbance, hosted by Dave Daba, ripping on players, coaches, and bad front office management. The Daily Disturbance starts.
Okay, here we go. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Coming up on the Daily Disturbance, can you believe it? The New Orleans Pelicans hired a retread to be their next National Basketball Association coach. But I will tell you why it was actually a good move to hire Stan Van Gundy. I've got that, plus a little bit on the Dallas Cowboys, who for the second day in a row have made it into the Disturbance as that entire football operations is spiraling completely out of control. It is Wednesday, October 21st of the year 2020. I am Dave Daba, and you have tuned into the Daily Disturbance. It's our show that usually lasts somewhere between 7 and 15 minutes in length. Thanks so much for tuning in. Please go ahead and subscribe to the show. It is a brand new show. I think this is episode number 7 or 8 at this point. That being said, let's talk Pelicans basketball. And I'm sure it's not something you thought we would be doing today at this juncture, but it is a breaking news story that the New Orleans Pelicans have hired Stan Van Gundy. Now, I don't know what you personally think about Stan Van Gundy as a head coach, but I always felt like Stan Van Gundy was one of those coaches that actually made teams better. You know, he was the kind of guy that could actually take a team and bring them to the playoffs, even if they didn't deserve to be there. And normally in the National Basketball Association, that is because the general manager of the team hasn't done a good enough job putting the right players in place on the team. That is the reality of how the NBA works. So Stan Van Gundy has won 523 games as a head coach in the National Basketball Association stints in Miami, Orlando, and Detroit. He's lost 384 games for a win-loss percentage of .577. Look, he's made the playoffs, I think, like 8 out of 12 years as a head coach in the National Basketball Association. When you look at the Western Conference of the NBA and you see where the New Orleans Pelicans finished this year, they were down towards the bottom. Sure, they got an invite to the bubble, but we all know what happened to the Pelicans in the bubble. So Stan Van Gundy will have the opportunity to coach really one of the best young players we've seen to enter the NBA. Look, Zion Williamson is light years ahead of anybody else that has entered the NBA in the last 10 years. Now it's a question of whether or not Stan Van Gundy can keep him healthy, keep him away from fast food, and if he can find a way to actually really teach Zion how to play the National Basketball Association game the right way. If Van Gundy's able to do those three things, then Zion Williamson will absolutely be an all-star for at least 10 years and could go down as one of the best basketball players, maybe one of the best 15 basketball players in the history of the NBA. But all of that feels like a bit of a stretch. Now, if you're a Pelicans fan and you're looking at your roster, so you got Drew Holiday and you got the former Laker pieces, the ball kid, and you've got some other really nice pieces on that team. You've got enough nice pieces for a coach that is as good as Stan Van Gundy is. Now remember, Stan coached in Miami, Orlando, and Detroit. Orlando and Detroit is where Stan Van Gundy has spent basically his last 9 years as a head coach in the National Basketball Association. And he's made it to the playoffs a bunch of times in those two cities. this was a good hire if the objective of the Pelicans is to get Zion Williamson to that next level and to get the Pelicans back into the playoffs. Look, they are not going to challenge the Lakers, the Clippers, the Nuggets, even the Utah Jazz next year. But the Pelicans, under the leadership of Stan Van Gundy, certainly could make it into the playoffs in 2021. All right, so now moving on to the Dallas Cowboys. I have to say, this Cowboy team, it was a team that I have to admit, I actually, at the start of this season on our Gods of Odds show on the Mighty.Rip YouTube channel, I predicted that the Cowboys were going to win the Super Bowl. Now, I do want to point out that the Cowboys are currently 2-4 and are sitting in first place in the NFC East. So I still have hope. I still have a glimmer of hope. But this Cowboys organization is an absolute mess. And I think what we're all realizing in the sports media this week is that Aaron Rodgers, for his last, 3 or 4 years, that Mike McCarthy was there, and Aaron Rodgers was indicating that there were issues with McCarthy, that we probably should have paid more attention to what Aaron Rodgers was saying. Because a bunch, not just one, not just two, but a bunch of Dallas Cowboy players came out in the last 36 hours, and they basically all said something similar all around sort of the lines of the Dallas Cowboys coaching staff is not prepared. The Dallas Cowboys coaching staff is not actually teaching us anything. Those are just unbelievably bad signs for a football team that is currently in first place in the NFC East at 2-4. Look, yesterday on the Daily Disturbance, we talked about relegation inside the National Football League. And after hearing all of these other stories come out since we did that broadcast, I can't be even more excited about the very notion of the NFL someday putting in a relegation rule into the NFL, because I believe teams like the Cowboys, the Washington football team, the best 1-4-1 team in the Eagles, and that horrific team in New York, and I'm not even talking about the Jets, I'm talking about the Giants. None of those teams deserve to be muddling up the rest of our National Football League with their absolutely pathetic football play. Look, teams rebuild all the time. It seems to me that every year in the National Football League, there's 10 teams that are rebuilding. There's usually 2, maybe 3 teams at the start of the season that will admit that they're rebuilding. But as the season goes on, there's a bunch of other teams that clearly begin to rebuild in the middle of the season. The Dallas Cowboys are in this bizarre, interesting spot right now in first place at 2-4. They are absolutely in a rebuild mode, especially on the defensive side of the ball. And I guarantee Jerry Jones and the rest of the Jones family and all the other people that are 4 degrees away from the Joneses have no way of actually admitting to themselves that they are in a rebuild mode. And until they do that, they're going to continue to suffer. Look, I'm telling you right now, just get ready for a 6-10 team to win the NFC East this year. All right, thanks so much for tuning in to the Daily Disturbance. If you haven't had a chance, please go ahead and subscribe to the big show. As I mentioned, these shows are usually 7 to 15 minutes in length, so they're short. Subscribe to the show. You give us your comments, and make sure you do check out our big sports website at mighty.rip when you have a chance. We've got a Tua time story up. We've got a story a letter to Woody Johnson, the head coach or the owner of the New York Football Jets. And of course, we've got some additional coverage of the Dallas Cowboys spiraling completely out of control. For the Daily Disturbance, I am Dave DeBaugh, wishing you all a fantastic rest of your sports day.
We